employee, one of the things that I ask is, who have you talked about this with? Because I'm also, my management style is to be proactive and open about ensuring that that communication is getting to who best needs to deal with that particular instance. You know, in many situations, it's not good for a manager to continually have one of their subordinates come to me with issues and not have a forum or a process of communication of which to address that with their immediate supervisor, which is important. And I, in turn, also need to support department heads in their roles. Now, in all these situations, the reality is that I'm typically always informed of some way, whether it be from the individual, you know, directly, or have it be from the department head. But I do think that it accomplishes that first step, no differently than the relationship I ask of you as trustees. If from one of our first meetings together, I said, listen, if you have an issue, if you have a problem, and more importantly, if you have one with me, I expect you to be in communication with me. Because I want that level of openness and communication in our relationship. Because it's vitally important. It's important how we work with each other and kind of lean in, you know, as trustee Amenta alluded, lean in and learn more about issues and things within the community and how we can move forward. So was not, I don't have a military background, so was not meant to benefit village in any way. But to really foster those appropriate lines. Because here's the other scenario. There could be scenarios where you have an employee or a subordinate within a department head who feels that they have a problem regarding that department head, and then they go directly to you as a trustee.
And what's, so I mean,
The trustees don't manage those individuals.
But presumably we would come and tell you about it.
I would
I mean,
strongly
I would
recommend
step
that.
in and try to solve a problem with the department head.
Correct. Correct.
I mean, I think to Trustee Maher's point, you know, we don't work here. You know, we're not here every day.
Mhm.
So, you know, I mean, and yet we're out in the community and people are asking us questions all the time, you know, and to get that familiarity with how the operations work and how decisions are made and all that kind of stuff, you know, it's difficult if the communication is expected to be, you know, narrowed. And I mean, because basically this is the only person we would be talking to is you. And I don't think you have enough time to be sitting down with each of us individually, educating us to the extent that we need to be educated about what's happening at the library and how you reserve a room and like people, you know, when is the garbage coming? I mean, you know, the types of, why didn't I get a notice that I forgot to pay my taxes and I didn't get a late notice, I just got hit with a fee. You know, I mean, so, yeah.
Oh gosh, this was not intended to prohibit those types of questions or inquiries.
But that's kind of what it is. I just think it could be softened and maybe to something that Trustee Maher was saying about it, you know, that communication happens in a variety of ways and a variety of channels. And I mean, I agree, you know, you shouldn't be bypassing your boss and going to the boss's boss, you know, that, so I mean, that's sort of commonsensical, but this sort of sounds like a really strict sort of way that everyone has to report things, and that, you know, for the kind of familiarity that we need to have with the organization, that might make it difficult for us. But that's just my feeling about it.
Is there, I'm just trying to identify, what is the point for you as elected officials that you feel uncomfortable in this section? Because most of it was written for the employees. So I'm having a hard time understanding which sentence are you struggling with for as an elected official?
That was sort of how, that was actually exactly my understanding of it, was that it was for the employees. Like, I sort of thought, I assumed that, you know, as residents come up to me and ask questions, that I would go to the department head as I currently have been, as necessary. So and I don't know, and maybe we just need to tighten up the interpretation or how we, because I sort of thought of it, that's why I was asking you those questions, was because I sort of thought of it as this is more applicable to the employees versus the trustees.
I mean, we want to just say that this section is intended to be applicable to the employees, and notwithstanding any of the foregoing, elected officials, I don't know, they still communicate in the manner most appropriate to something. I'm not sure what the language would be, but something like that.
Lauren, I'm not saying that it constrains us and how we communicate, I'm just saying more that, you know, as issues come up in the, like I hear a lot of rumors all the time, you know, like, and people will talk just, like, not even that people talk to me, but village employees will talk to residents, and then residents, all these rumors are happening, and people are asking me, and I have like no idea, you know. So, I mean, I'm just saying that it's not so much us, but it's more that an employee would feel like, that if things weren't coming up this way, the only person who would be authorized to talk to us about anything, like all our communication about every question that we get asked or everything would go to Rebecca. And that's a lot, I mean, you know, I don't know, I'm not in her office calling her on everything that I get a question about. So yeah, I'm more talking about how things go up rather than what we do, because what we do, we're not really constrained by this. But.
Well, you know, with regards to this section, what I can say is that it's in here because to your point, you know, you had said it would make common sense that one would talk to their supervisor directly. It was not common sense in a couple instances that we had in this last year. So I wanted to ensure that if we weren't being clear about that we should be. Because you know, just the nature of the beast, sometimes the stuff that you have in your HR manual isn't to address all the common sense, but to lay some framework in terms of how discussions can have. So it was by no means meant to be militant. It was by no means meant to, you know, I am open and welcome in terms of communication. You know, I'm not sure maybe if there's something we could look at from the board's perspective in the communication plan, or, but it was the true purpose and intention of this to really just, if you saw that it wasn't, you know, when if I saw it wasn't in there, I wanted to make sure that we were kind of putting it in there so that people understood where to go.
Like this sense, if an employee has any questions, opinions, or suggestions about the information contained in this manual or about any other aspect of his or her job, so that's pretty all encompassing. Any aspect of your job, if you have any questions, opinions, or suggestions, then those questions, opinions, or suggestions must be directed to the organization's lines of communication. So the way this is stated is any concern, congratulation, anything, you know, you wouldn't, you know, you might tell a coworker, but so I guess I'm saying the way this is written, and I won't say it again because I'm repeating myself, is that everything is funneled up, and it seems that the only point of communication that we would have would be with Rebecca, and I don't, so I don't know, I hear what you guys are saying, and I understand what you're saying, and that is everyone who's worked in an organization knows that's how it has to happen, but I wonder if there's a way to add something about, you know, it doesn't mean like, oh, you're going to be disciplined if you have a conversation with someone who has a conversation with someone who then gets information that a trustee hears about and asks a question about, you know, that wouldn't be a disciplinary matter.
Is there like a I mean, I'm open.
Right, so I think
I was
the-
thinking about this through more of a management and employment.
And guidance provided.
Right. So, you know, that's what makes it helpful to bounce these things off of trustees. So, I mean, you know, we're open to suggestions if there's.
Yeah, so I think for the purposes of tonight, we've had good discussion. I think what I've heard is there was, the intent was to create a framework for communication within departments and within the organization, not to discourage, but to provide that guidance. If there are suggestions to alter it, I think we would need to really kind of get to that point, or maybe work with it and bring it back to us. But I think we've talked about it, you know, to Trustee Menta's point, we've kind of covered the basis of what the reactions and the interpretation are. We've also heard what the intent is and how it will be used.
With the discussion we've had, and I understand that there are concerns about the intent and everything you described, I'm comfortable voting on this now, and then we could always amend it, or, you know, but I don't.
Right, I guess I need to hear from the board, is there an alternative that you're seeking? Are you, is this, can we have a motion? Or is there something you need before
I
that?
mean, what if we get rid of that sentence that Trustee Menta too?
Would that alter the intent and, I mean,
I'm not gonna get caught up in a sentence, it's, because really
Oh, the
that's not the
last
purpose
sentence.
of me, even engaging in the discussion. I am open to suggestions and to move forward, but I do feel it's important that the people who are employed within your organization know what the lines of communication are.
What the expectation is.
Right, well, more
And it
than the
doesn't, it's
expectation
not
is
laying
all.
out that this is a disciplinary, that somebody could be disciplined over this and given a performance report or put on
Well, if it's
probation.
in the employee manual, and you don't
Right.
follow it, then that's grounds for discipline.
So, yeah, is it an option to say it is recommended other than it must be, or is it, it's expected? Is that-
I mean, does any employees who receive directives or requests from a citizen or elected appointed official are to immediately report such directive or request to the employee supervisor. No specific are to be fulfilled unless permission to do is given by the employee supervisor. So if I have a conversation with an employee, you know, that's going to be immediately reported. I mean, so do not expect that you're ever going to be able to have a confidential conversation with anyone in this organization. I mean, maybe that's appropriate, maybe that's whatever, you know,
I think at this point we would need an alternative, I think if we're gonna.
I'm not, yeah, I don't have, I mean, I'm just gonna vote no. I didn't, you know, rewrite this, and I don't, you know, that's just my opinion, and I'm gonna vote no. I think it's too restrictive, and it limits our ability to do what we need to do as trustees, so.
I don't have a problem with that last paragraph, because it's directives and requests. I mean, the village manager works for us, and is the key contact, and reporting to her is important, so she's aware of what's going on, and also, she's responsible for getting all the work done, and trustees or other citizens or other people are asking employees to do work, or seeking some other request. They work for the village manager, for us ultimately, the village manager is our rep, so they need to control what the work the employees are doing. I don't have a problem with that.
If anybody would present an alternative at this point.
Trying to kind of stake out a compromise and maybe an alternative. I mean, what if we just took out or elected appointed official? I mean, you know, it sounds like this is something where it's not really, it's not trying to constrain what we're doing. We're kind of running into it right there. And, you know, maybe it's not as precise, but maybe that solves our problem.
I guess we need to know if there really, if everybody feels, if it's consensus that there is a problem, you know. I'm not saying that we should overlook, but I also think we've had a lot of discussion on both sides, so maybe board members are feeling differently.
And I wanted to say, part of eliminating rumors and opportunity for malfeasance, I think it is good to have some structure, and if we're included in that process, I don't have a problem, because it ultimately, it's clear to us, like, if I hear what you're saying, Trustee Menta, we run into people in the supermarket, on the street, et cetera, employees of the village and otherwise, but, well, okay, I'll back up a couple of things. One, when someone asks me a question like, oh, why wasn't my garbage picked up on X day? it's not our, it's nice, it's a courtesy as a trustee if we have, get that information to someone, but it's not really part of our elected office. There are other routes to obtain, this information. We can direct people to those as well. So I don't feel encumbered, and I also don't have a problem, and Rebecca was often, directing me to Tyler. I've never had an issue with getting information when I needed it. So I guess I'm saying I don't have a problem with it. There's a reason that it's being asked of us, and I also don't want to go line item veto, this employee manual or be here for another hour on it. I would say we could take a vote. If there's a suggestion later on, we can always revisit this and ask that this be brought back to us. But I really don't want to change the entire document by inserting a word here or there without, I don't know.
Would you like to make
Can
a
I
more
suggest that
comprehensive?
someone, if you want to take a vote, make a
Yeah,
motion?
I think we need a motion on
Someone
someone.
make a
I
motion.
move to approve the, or to consider